Good morning, Artificial Hearts family. It's a very special morning here in Chicago, Illinois. We're with a very special guest, Professor Irwin Weil. Professor Irwin Weil is a very good friend of our Artificial Hearts community. He is one of the leading foremost scholars in Dostoevsky with over 60 years of experience teaching Russian literature. We're very privileged to be here at his home to hear a very special holiday message that he has for all of you, our viewers who are tuning in to hear this very special message. I'm gonna turn it now to my co-host, business partner, and co-founder of Artificial Hearts, Kézia Damas Gomes, who's gonna give a little message in Portuguese to our viewers in Brazil and in the Portuguese-speaking world.
Hello, todo mundo, como vocês estão? É um prazer para nós estarmos aqui na casa do professor Irwin Weil. E para nós é um privilégio, você que faz parte da família do Artificial Hearts, que tem acompanhado o nosso trabalho, você precisa saber quão importante essa pessoa é para o nosso projeto. Ele é um amante da obra de Dostoevsky, trabalhou por muitos anos dando aulas da literatura russa e se debruça muito na arte do Dostoevsky. E nessa manhã, especialmente nessa manhã, estamos aqui na casa dele, desfrutando desse incrível momento de uma entrevista extraordinária e única, onde nós iremos compartilhar com vocês um pouco da experiência da vida dele, do que ele tem escrito, do que ele construiu ao longo de sua carreira, e nós iremos conversar em inglês e em português.
Professor Weil, we want to now hand you the word, and please feel free to speak to our viewers.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to greet you here and hope for a good morning. Fyodor Dostoevsky. This name stared me straight in the face as I looked puzzlingly at the page before my eyes. I said to my friend next to me, "Who is he?" The response, "Oh, some Russian guy." This was January 1947. I had just entered the University of Chicago as a first-year undergraduate student. Now, part of our study requirement was that all incoming freshmen had to take a course in world literature. After reading some literature translated from classical Greek, I proceeded to read a novel written by this Russian man whose name I had never heard of before. To my amazement, he translated the text from some Russian guy with an incredibly moving series of pages running through my eyes. Every character embodied an individual entering straight into my heart. Every experience spoke to the most moving events I'd ever felt in my life. Only in my previous reading of Shakespeare in the Old Testament did I remember ever encountering such a deeply moving account of human experience. The book's title was The Brothers Karamazov. 3 years later, I was reading it in the original Russian. I chose Slavic studies for my major, and the rest is history. By the way, добро пожаловать на русский язык. The Brothers Karamazov not only changed my life, but the lives of countless others who have scrolled through its pages since original publication in 1881. The book was written close to the time of the author's death. Dostoevsky's reputation and his involvement in the controversial issues of the day had by that time made him a very widely observed public figure. He was widely admired by the public at large and somewhat bitterly opposed by those involved in the radical movements of that time. By the time of his death, the Communist Party began to establish its regime in 1917. And Dostoevsky's writings and his religious ideas were seen as dangerous and subversive due to their criticism of the communist system. The communists prohibited the reprinting of his writings and made sure that he was not taught in schools and the university. By the late 1930s, this began to change, and some of Dostoevsky's works were published. After World War II, almost all of his work was published and openly admired, with the exception of The Idiot and Prince Pushkin's well-known and blatant speech against socialism. The reception of Dostoevsky's writings, both shortly before and after his death, elucidate the key message and themes behind the Brothers Karamazov. When Dostoevsky began writing this work, which would be his final novel, roughly 7/8 of the Russian population had recently been liberated from slavery. Now, how do you deal with that population? What problems did they face? These were questions Dostoevsky had to grapple with. On the other side of the spectrum, he was also involved with arguments against the growing radicalism and atheism of the well-educated strata of elite Russian society in Dostoevsky's day. These ideas were aptly embodied through the popular character named Bazarov from Turgenev's most widely read and admired novel, in English we call it Fathers and Sons, in Russian Отцы и дети. Bazarov eloquently attacked all the religious themes of the Tsarist policies, representing many of the ideas that were popular in Dostoevsky's time. Dostoevsky thought these ideas were terrible, although he acknowledged their attractiveness to Russian society, especially among the intellectual and university elites. One takes this historical situation into account, the message behind the Brothers Karamazov starts to become clearer. Dostoevsky is trying to make his readers understand at a much deeper level what might be the answer to the real questions of life. These are questions that have brought about the actions of people in society right now. In a society where people were mainly interested in material things. Excuse me, the Brothers Karamazov, Brathed Karamazov, serves to get them to think about things that are not material, but very deep within the human spirit. One of these things was the human search for meaning. Dmitri, the eldest Karamazov brother, personified this well by saying, the meaning of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. Dostoevsky believed this question affected every heart, whether it be that of the emancipated serf or that of the Russian secular, liberal, and intellectual atheistic elite of his day. One might well say that this is a matter affecting us today in our time. Although he would be posthumously maligned by the communists for what they deemed his so-called reactionary reformist politics, Dostoevsky was on to something. The problem of the search for meaning goes much deeper than one can think of on a mere superficial level. When tested before the anvil of reality, the dictum embodied and celebrated by the novel's main anti-hero, the materialist atheist Ivan Karamazov, everything is permitted, shatters into a million pieces. Some problems cannot be solved through human engineering at all. Certain matters are ultimately matters of the heart. In the heart of every human being lies an infinite spiritual whole. This whole can only be filled by an infinite spiritual object. Inspired by his Christian faith, Dostoevsky's answer to this seems to have been, if anything does preserve society, even in our time, that's Dostoevsky's time, and does regenerate and transform the criminal, it is only the law of Christ. The Brothers Karamazov shows Dostoevsky at his finest when dealing with these basic issues inherent to human experience. Human faith, family experiences, the ways of human growth, and not least interesting, some of the basic causes of the Russian Revolution and the general causes of revolutionary ideas, all play an important role in this classic novel. Like a magician, Dostoevsky vividly deals with these issues through the lives of his three brothers, seizing their strong emotional ideas and actions. Dmitri, one of the brothers, is a sensualist eldest brother who cannot resist the sexual attractiveness of Grushenka. Grushenka's name comes from the Russian word grush, which is the same word for pear, and so could be translated as sweet, juicy pear. He's an irresistible girl whose attractive and beauty and fiery personality draws in Dmitri and his brother Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov Ivan, the middle child, is the brilliant characterization of an important part of the intelligentsia in Russia at that time. A fiery atheist, Ivan rejects not only God, but God's word, which he refuses to accept. Alexei, that is to say Alyosha, is the religious brother, an inhabitant of a Russian Orthodox monastery. His character is presented with a great deal of love. Dostoevsky based him on his own son Alexei, who died at a very young age, around 3 years old. In his own notebooks, he indicated that he intended to present Alyosha as a young religious man who would become enchanted by radical revolutionary and atheist ideas in Russia. However, he died before he could carry out this idea. We can learn a lot in our time absorbing the events, faith, and sometimes non-faith of the three brothers. In order to bring these characters to life, Dostoevsky used many of the people whom he used to meet while in exile in a Siberian prison, and whom he otherwise would never have met. The problems these people were faced were not those you would ordinarily encounter. Nevertheless, they are problems that go very deeply into the human soul. They are problems that haunt us even in our own time, making these characters present even among those of us living in the 21st century in the West. Dmitri certainly lives in our time. Many popular aspects of our society, most emphatically the realities of Hollywood, would happily dance to his tune. His younger brother Ivan brings the ideas of atheism and materialism of our contemporary city as being as flaming reality in the chapter entitled "The Tale of the Grand Inquisitor," Великого Инквизитора. The tale of the Grand Inquisitor is my personal favorite scene of the Brothers Karamazov. In brilliant ways, Dostoevsky gets into the thinking and feelings of the political radicals and theorists of his own time. Both Ivan's artistic excitement and Alyosha's somewhat tolerant, horrified acceptance of Ivan's inspired storytelling bring a deeply engraved, imaginative quality to the excitement of anyone who is emotionally and intellectually involved in problems of faith and its opposite, rebellion. It makes us wonder, how is it possible to have faith in a society that is ridden with the worst kind of human problems? In what way can one find a path that gives answers to these problems? How can one define faith in a way that would be acceptable to a society that works, or doesn't work, this way? Perhaps the answer lies in Dostoevsky's own faith, a faith born, in his own words, out of a furnace of doubts. Dostoevsky understands firsthand that faith does not in the least spring from a miracle, but miracle springs from faith. As a young man, he stood before death before affiliating himself with the revolutionary Petersburg circle. While he was stood before the firing line awaiting death, his sentence was commuted at the last minute to exile and hard labor in Siberia. Marching in chains to exile, an elderly woman met him and handed him a copy of the New Testament. He never lost that book, not to his dying day. We see Dostoevsky's faith in the Brothers Karamazov. In this work, he wrestles with problems of the relationship between religious faith and notions of human freedom. He uses the teachings of Jesus to oppose some of the most powerful claims by atheism, that is, human life and human faith figure prominently in this book. The last scene in the graveyard, where Ilyusha, the young boy, has just been buried, and Alyosha talks about the possibilities of resurrection. Possibilities of resurrection to illustrate this. The possibility of resurrection in the Christian sense and the intellectual urging to reject the whole scheme of things stirs any sensitive reader to look deeply into his or her own soul. This brings forth Dostoevsky's idea of human destiny, alluding to the first words of the book from John 12:24. Unless the grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain. Dostoevsky's legacy, his faith, and the surgical analysis of the human condition embodied in the Brothers Karamazov continue to live on with us until this day. When I first came to Moscow in 1960, I lived in the dormitory of Moscow University. During my first time there, I had the chance to sit in on some of the courses at the university. The professor at that course was obviously a genuine admirer of Dostoevsky's work, and that wasn't common in revolutionary in those days. He was obviously a genuine admirer of Dostoevsky's work, and similarly, the students responded with the same feeling. I heard a great deal about Dostoevsky, both from students in the Humanities University and in all the traditional universities in Moscow. The responses have been the most varied I've found since I first started an exchange program between students and scholars of the U.S. and former USSR more than 50 years ago. Some of the young people follow the line of communist thinking attacked by Dostoevsky. Others recognize the writer's genius but tries to put him in line with their contemporary political ideology, that is, the communism of that day. This became even stronger in the contemporary generation in Russia. Many of them simply take a kind of patriotic pride in being part of a Russian cultural history, which includes such geniuses as Dostoevsky. I think we could include no small number of our own young people who admire his faith. There is hardly any American or British contemporary writer who does not mention Dostoevsky. His image hovers over them as a kind of a phantom graced with the actions of an angel. Dostoevsky's greatness received recognition even among his most bitterest and hostile critics. Perhaps this is most powerful in the work and arguments of the famous Russian emigre Vladimir Nabokov. Nabokov argued passionately and energetically against the importance and popularity of Dostoevsky. His very emotional and brilliant prose only makes Dostoevsky's influence on him more apparent. Nabokov included his own reaction in a letter he wrote me after I sent him my book about Gorky, whom he normally would not like. He wrote to me, "Thank you very much for your courtesy in sending me your book, with which I totally disagree." That's pure Nabokov. This also reflects his estimation of Dostoevsky, that I think that even Dostoevsky, who deeply disliked Dostoevsky, had to admit that the writer occupies a very high place on the mountain of a writer's destinies. Dostoevsky's legacy lives on, even beyond the confines of the 19th century Tsarist Russia. Totalitarian and illegal ideologies still continue to entice with problems of immortality to fill the existential void in the heart of the masses. The psychopathic tendency is still, this psychopathic tendency is still alluring to modern men and women who hurl themselves headlong into the empty pit of metaphysical nihilism and existential despair. Among all these temptations battling over people's hearts, Dostoevsky challenges us to look beyond the limits of materialism, to exclaim, "I want to live for immortality, and I will accept no compromise." to a society where the very concept of reality is questioned. Father Zosima's words ring true today. Everything passes, but only truth remains. Dostoevsky and his works were, are, and will continue to be widely admired, not only as the best examples of Russian literature, I should say among the best examples of Russian literature, but also of world literature. My wish is, through this telling of the Brothers Karamazov set in a future universe, artificial hearts may communicate a glimpse, even if for a brief moment, into the essence and spirit of this masterpiece, and introduce its audience to the depth and richness of his author. I hope that it will warm the hearts of his readers the same way as it came into my heart, which was warmed when I first opened the pages of that unforgettable fiction by some, as they called him, Russian guy, by the name of Fyodor Mikhailovich Dostoevsky.
Professor Weil, we want to thank you again for your availability and for hosting us and having this reading. For those who don't know, those of you who are watching us online on the internet, we first met Professor Weil. We first began this collaboration to disseminate the works of Dostoevsky to popular culture in May of this year, when I was working on my Ph.D. At Princeton Theological Seminary, and very interested in the work that Dostoevsky has for our modern society. And we just wanted to thank you both then and now for the help that you have given us to popularize the works of Dostoevsky to the younger audience. And as a token of our appreciation, we have a little gift for you. If you want, Keza can help you open it. Maybe help him just open it.
And I'd like to thank you for bringing this program into my house.
No, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, just. And I think you're in for a treat. You'll like the. Yeah, it's gonna show him, and then yeah, there we go. And you can get that paper out.
Oh. And I would like to thank you both for the gift and for coming into my house for this very, very impressive program. I won't tell you what's going into this. I will guarantee it's not a lot.
And we also want to thank Alice, who's here with us, who made this meeting possible.
You're so very welcome.
Yeah, thank
it looked
you.
beautiful. I think it was beautiful.
Thank you. And if you notice here, just to show you a little bit of the detail on the mug, this is from Alyosha's speech at the end of the final book, where it says, "You must know that there is nothing higher and stronger and more wholesome and good for life in the future than some good memory, especially a memory of childhood home." And as we go with our families this holiday season, don't forget this message. Be with your loved ones and enjoy these happy holidays.
Exato. E em português, dizendo para vocês quão importante esse momento tem sido para a gente, nós estamos presenteando ele dando essa xícara que tem uma das mais importantes frases de Dostoevsky no final do livro. E não esqueça de deixar essa mensagem em seu coração. Não permita que os valores tradicionais e o amor de Deus saia do seu coração, porque sem ele você não é nada. Com ele você é tudo.
И я хотел бы немножко проводить этот разговор на великий русский язык. I would like to bring into this program a bit of the great Russian language.
Oh.